Hey guys, welcome back to Nerd Talk. I'm Jasmine from PrettyBrown&Nerdy, and I am here with Kevin Powell. Hey, how's it going, Kevin?
Hey, it's going pretty good. How you doing?
I'm doing good, you know. I'm making it through Texas heat. It's like 100
Yep,
degrees outside. I'm dying.
I feel
But
that.
I'm here.
Yep.
So, in this episode, we're kind of going to go into something that I feel we don't really get a lot of perspective on. It's about going to be about all things gaming industry and just different professions within the gaming industry, but this one is going to really focus on game design. I know we hear a lot about game design, but we're not too sure, what does design entail? Is it like designing characters, levels? Like how does this work? What do we do? Cuz I know a lot of people want to get into the games industry, but it's like, okay, I want to work in games. All right, what do you want to do? Uh, I don't know exactly, but I know I want to work in games. So
Yeah.
I thought it would be good to, bring some people I know on that have been killing it in the game, that are just like dominating in the industry right now in their profession, and kind of give some insight into what exactly it is that you guys do and how that kind of works within the games industry. So we'll start with a little bit about your background. So tell us
Okay.
all of the good stuff.
All right. Well, yeah. So it starts back in Savannah, Georgia. So I'm from Savannah, Georgia, and so there's a college there called Savannah College of Art and Design. That's where I went to school when I
Scad.
initially, yeah, SCAD for short. I ended up going there. They had kind of just started their game development program, and I had no idea about all of the various facets of game development. So all I knew is that I just wanted to make games. I had no idea what that entailed. So yeah, I just kind of applied. I got accepted, and then from there it was foundation classes, learning art, color theory, all of that stuff. But once I got into the courses for game development, I started to see, oh, there's animation, there's concept art, there's level design, there's game design. There's just so many different things. So then I kind of started focusing on level design and environment art. I felt like those kind of went hand in hand, and I was really interested in both. Learning Maya, 3D Studio Max, Photoshop, all of that stuff. But then also Unreal 3 had kind of just come out in the middle of my time at SCAD, and so uh, also Gears of War had an editor, and so we kind of just got those games, got Unreal Tournament, and just bust open the editor and would just be messing around in there. We had various classes that were focused on level design specific stuff. So yeah, it was a lot, but I learned a ton during my time at SCAD. I met a lot of really awesome people. And then that eventually led to me applying to almost every single studio in the US, especially after I graduated, because it was around the time of like the 2009 like recession.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, like jobs were scarce.
Yeah.
And so yeah, everybody was just trying to make it. Um, and so yeah, I was working a regular job, and then I eventually applied to High Res Studios, and they gave me my first job in the industry as a level designer. So I went to move to Atlanta and started working for High Res. They were making a game called Global Agenda at the time, which is kind of just this third person, not really a MOBA, but like an action shooter, and that was pretty cool. Just kind of made story missions and levels, and then also made a couple of multiplayer. I think it was 10 on 10 was the format. But yeah, it was a PvP, fast-paced action with jetpacks, all of that stuff. And so that was interesting, just kind of learning how to uh, build levels around people being able to fly anywhere, basically. So it's like, how do you even guide that?
Yeah.
But yeah, I learned a lot with that. But then, like I said before, I also was learning 3D art, so I eventually ran out of levels to make, and so I was like, well, I can do art too. I want to keep my job. So yeah, they let me do some 3D art, and so I ended up making a modular art set for one of the expansions for Global Agenda. And that was really cool. Shipping actual art in a game. I never would have imagined I was going to be able to, to do that at any point. But yeah, so we ended up doing that, and then eventually we transitioned into working on uh, Tribes Ascend. And so that was really cool because I heard of Tribes before. I hadn't played the earlier ones, but just through research and all of that stuff, I became really familiar with it. But I knew it was just a very beloved franchise among a bunch of very passionate individuals on the internet. Yeah, we kind of learned about that once we started working on it, because there were a lot of people that had a lot of very strong opinions about our design choices and everything. But it was really fun working on that game. For people that don't know what Tribes is, it's this very fast paced first person shooter. And one of the main game types is capture the flag, and you
Mm.
have various armor types and everything with different weights. And so it was really cool getting to kind of take what I'd learned from Global Agenda, especially dealing with jetpacks and stuff like that, and apply that to my level designs for Tribes of Sin. Then after that, this is probably right around what 2012. We kind of started working on Smite.
A.
uh, it was kind of in development during that whole time, but we had different teams, all that stuff. But I actually got to make the original conquest map for Smite,
Oh, wow.
uh, which was, yeah, like the main game type for a MOBA. So that was really cool. I played a lot of League of Legends, a little bit of Dota, Heroes of New Earth. So I was pretty familiar with the design of those games. And then kind of taking that and putting it into this third person MOBA was really cool. I had a lot of fun with that. And then we were making the conquest map, and then I kind of was flip flopping between making art and stuff like that. And then I eventually landed in the position of god designer. So they let me actually design out some gods for Smite, which was really cool. I got to design Rom, Kabrakin, Hu Yi, uh, who else? Nox, Medusa.
Wow.
Uh, yeah,
So
it,
quite
it
a
was
bit of
really cool.
yeah, so quite a bit
Yeah,
of characters actually. And
yeah.
I think especially do you feel like your background like working through 3D art and stuff was really helpful to kind of give you some perspective on, what designs would mesh well and work with the characters, and I'm sure that had to be beneficial for the art team too, with you having that knowledge, because you were able to probably work with them on a level that some might not be able to if they don't have an art background. They'll know, okay, I want to design or, help design this character, but they don't know like the fundamentals and how, that'll work for the art team. So do you feel like that was, very helpful to have that knowledge?
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like knowing what other parts of the team are affected by the decisions you make, is a really good thing to know. Just because I know that like my decision to say, oh well, this character needs to have X Y Z is gonna cause the animation team to have to do certain things, or going to cause the 3D artist to have to do certain things or add certain elements to the character. Effects artists, kind of everything stems from that original design, right? So even just knowing a little bit about what happens to the pipeline after your work is implemented or your decisions are made, uh, knowing what happens after that, I think is really important. And so yeah, I think it helped out a lot. Yeah, just sitting in meetings and knowing that, okay, if we make this decision to have this ability on this character, that's going to add X amount of time for the animators to have to get those animations in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so it kind of trickles down everywhere. So yeah, design, I think, really, you should be really knowledgeable about just pretty much the other disciplines that you're going to be affecting with your decisions. And yeah, I felt like that definitely helped out during my time there at High Res working on Smite. Um, And yeah, so through working on Smite and everything, I eventually ended up applying to Gearbox because one of my friends that I went to school with at SCAD, Jimmy Barnett, he's a 3D artist. He's actually a lead weapons artist on Borderlands.
Mm-hmm.
So he like I'd always wanted to work with him, and so I was like, okay, well, I want to work on Borderlands as well because I love that franchise.
Yeah.
So yeah, I went. I remember going to, was it PAX South, back in 2014 or
Yeah,
2015?
about like
Yeah,
2014, 2015
yeah,
ish, around that
yeah,
time.
yeah. So yeah, I went to PAX South, and I remember they had the whole presentation, and at the end, it was like Borderlands 3. It's happening, or the next Borderlands. You could be a part of the dev team, and they had all these like shadow like figures in the background. It was like, this could be you, and I was like, that could be me.
It's like out of a movie,
So
you know? It's just
yeah,
like this could be you. And then
yeah.
the camera pans into your face and you're all like awe-eyed, like, ooh.
Yeah. So yeah, I went to, yeah, PAX South and everything, and I was like, man, this seems really cool. And then I got to meet a lot of people from the dev team, and they were just all really awesome people. So I ended up applying after PAX and ended up getting a job as a character designer on Battleborn, which was probably one of the most fun projects I've ever worked on. That game, I love that game so much. I know it didn't do super well,
But
but
I hear
I
that
had a
sentiment a lot, like a lot of people, despite, how well or it did, like a lot
Mhm.
of people really had especially like from the devs. Everyone I talked to at my time there, was like I really
Yeah.
enjoyed working on that game cuz hear that, a lot of people that was kind of a chance to really just throw all the creative ideas on the table, and especially with like
Mhm.
how many characters Battleborn has and every character is so different, you can just tell that the team had so much fun with it.
Yeah, yeah, like all of the designs and everything. Most of the characters were already established by the time I got there, but some of them were missing like kit designs and stuff like that. So I actually got to take on like two or three of them. I think I got like two of the main cast of characters and then one expansion character. It was Melka, Cleese, and oh, I'm trying to remember the name of the last one. Oh, she had the syringe arm. I'm
Yeah.
having a
Okay,
brain fart
I
right
know the
now.
name escapes me too, but I know which
Yeah.
one you're talking about.
Is it Beatrix? Yeah,
Beatrice,
Beatrix.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 Look at us, we both work there, and we like,
Yeah.
wait.
I hate when that happens. I'm just like, it's on the tip of my
It's like
tongue.
I promise I know. I promise.
Yeah. But yeah, I got to work on those three characters, and that it was just really really fun. Just with even just the style and everything, and then also I feel like they got melee in first person like really right. Like it
Hmm.
felt really good, especially playing like Wrath. I don't know. I just had a lot of fun. Like also playing that game. It was a shame that it didn't do as well, but it happens.
Yeah,
You can't always work on successful games, but
and I think that's an important thing to put out too, especially for those wanting to get into the industry. It's like, there's going to be those success, you want to have the success moments where you're all like, yeah, we killed this, we dominated this. But
yeah,
you also have to prepare yourself for the moments that, no one likes, that, when things don't exactly go how you thought they would go. And how do you
yeah,
navigate through those situations? So I think that's important to mention too, because it kind of just, I think it's something that we don't really talk a lot about in the industry, as well as like how do you deal with the failures, or I don't really see it as like complete failure, the learning experiences, or when things don't go the way that you plan. So yeah,
yeah,
I definitely
yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, having like the postmortems and everything, because even though it might not have done well, I feel like everybody learned a ton from just working on it, and you can tell just like kind of the lessons that carried over from that into Borderlands 3, and
Hmm.
with the melee with that, and all of that stuff. And so yeah, it definitely wasn't for nothing, but Yeah, it's just a really cool experience working on it. And then, yeah, those lessons that we learned from that, I feel like really help guide and transition us into, making Borderlands 3 what it is.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I eventually we started working on Borderlands 3, and yeah, that just released last year. And then, yeah, I ended up after that, a couple of months back, I left Gearbox to go to Airship Syndicate, which has been really cool. And yeah, they're working on. I think they announced last year that they're the first Riot Forge studio, and so
Yeah.
they're working on the Ruin King League of Legends story.
A
So yeah, so that's kind of my whole career in a nutshell right there.
it's a very like fulfilling career. I would, assume like 10 years, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, 10
yeah,
years in the
yeah, a little
industry,
over
right?
10 years.
How
Yeah,
does
it's been
it
fun.
Yeah, that must be like so interesting to look back on too, especially like cuz you kind of when you're updating your resume and stuff, like that must be kind of eye-opening cuz at the time you don't really feel like you're doing all this stuff and then you really sit down and lay it out all like documented and you're like, "Man, like this has been wild." It's been a
Yeah,
lot,
yeah,
right?
it really has been. Like, yeah, it's been a lot of stuff, and just, yeah, a lot of learning. Yeah, just
Do you
it's been really cool. Like, I feel fortunate, that I've been in this industry for
Mhm.
that long, and I don't feel really burnt out or anything. I'm still really passionate about working on projects that interest me and everything. So yeah, and I don't really see myself stopping anytime soon. So
Well, I don't think you should either.
yeah.
So given your background and everything that you've done, do you feel like game design, so where did that come into the picture? Was it Did it start kind of when you got assigned to be a god designer on Smite, and did it just kind of cultivate from there? Was being a god designer on Smite kind of similar to some of the things that people will see in game design or what they'll be doing in their career as a game designer?
Yeah, I think honestly it kind of varies from studio to studio, kind of what that role is. And it depends on the project and everything. But yeah, it really stemmed from back in college. I knew I wanted to design games. And so I started out with level design because I felt like that was the easiest way to kind of get more into design, because I didn't have any real training other than just playing a lot of video games, growing up. So yeah, that I feel like it really stems from that, and then just the more I learned, the more I kind of gravitated towards wanting to affect more within the game, and also learn how those loops go when you're trying to make sure that it's satisfying for a player to do certain things in the game. You want to make sure that, yeah, everything that they're doing is kind of tailored, and trying to figure out what exactly to allow the player to do, but not make it seem like they have no choice,
Mhm.
is real interesting to me. And I mean, I love puzzle games and everything, and problem solving, and I feel like that's what a lot of game development is in general. But yeah, through game design, I feel like you can conquer some very interesting puzzles just throughout development. So yeah, I kind of just gravitated towards that, and then yeah, over the years, getting to design characters, I was like, oh man, that's really cool. It's this kind of self-contained thing, so you're making a kit for a character. You get to decide everything about that character, how they move, how much damage they do, how much health they have. Just kind of everything they can do, and collaborating with your fellow devs and making the best thing you can is just really cool, because it's not just the design. So the effects artists, will have an idea of like, oh, this ability will look cool if we do this with it, with the effects. And I'm just like, okay, cool, yeah, just go do that, do what you're passionate about. And just letting people kind of uh, take ownership, and yeah, just kind of push forward their creativity. So um yeah, just kind of being able to I guess orchestrate certain things within the game was really appealing to me. So that's kind of where it started, and then just throughout the years, I've been able to get in different roles that involve design, but they're kind of different. So through doing character design on Smite and on Battleborn, I learned a lot. But then after that, I eventually moved over into systems design
Hmm.
on Borderlands 3. So I was doing a lot more of just kind of designing out entire systems within a game. So, like in Borderlands 3, I designed out like the player room. And so you have to kind of specify what exactly happens in that player room.
Hmm.
What's the limitations of that? What do the players see as soon as they go in the room? What can they interact with? Uh, what do all these things do? And that was really cool because then that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, yeah, you can design out entire games with these systems, and you can make them really interesting, and you can push your design a little more, trying to solve interesting problems with, how do you go about making, like, for example, like for like a platformer, how do you make that more interesting, that how do you make it something that people haven't seen before, or how do you put a
Hmm.
twist on it? And so just doing those kind of like thought exercises and everything, it was really really interesting to me too. So yeah, just it's been a journey, but yeah, I can't see myself doing anything else, honestly. It's yeah, it's just been really cool.
Hearing that makes me curious myself. I have some questions in regards to that too,
Uh-huh.
because I know system design. So you said kind of, for example, the character rooms, figuring out what's going to happen in those rooms, what you're going to do in those rooms. So does that design kind of go hand in hand with level design? Because we're designing levels and like, okay, here's how you have the environment, you have like what's going to
Hmm.
occur in the level, but how does the environment and everything within it affect the player? Like kind of
Yeah.
like narrative, you have fail states, and it's like, okay, so what is this part of the environment? Is it going to inflict damage on the character, or do these creatures interact this way with the character? So do you feel like that's a huge collaborative process with those departments as well, kind of making all that mesh together to make sure it's in unison?
Yeah. Specifically, I can think of an example on Borderlands 3. One of my coworkers, Ian, he ended up heading up like the interactive objects for the game. And so prime example, he made the barrels. So, like the exploding barrels in the game, that's a entire system within itself. And so he had to design out like, okay, these are the ways you can interact with the barrels. They have physics. You can melee them. They'll go flying. All of that stuff. They explode. And within that, they are in the environment. So that automatically ropes in level design, because you have combat designers, you have level designers. They get together and then they have to design out these combat spaces and everything. So now you have an environmental interaction that is happening, and you have to make sure that all of these things that the player can do are playing nice with the environment. So yeah, level design definitely is a part of that, but I don't think they have to. It's better if they do talk and communicate. So if you have your combat designer and your systems designer and your level designer, sometimes they're all the same person.
Yeah.
But
Jack
yeah,
of all trades in the studio exists. They be doing
yeah,
everything.
definitely. Um, so yeah, having you know just all of those departments, if they are different people, talk to make sure that these interactions are working how they're supposed to. Um, I think that is where you have the crossover. So yeah, definitely having a level designer use all of the things that are designed by the systems designer for environments and stuff like that is really important. So there could be a feature that was made by a systems designer that might not get used, but everybody has to be on the same page. So there could have been an interactive object that was made, that was designed out by a systems designer, that the level designers just didn't use, and that would be a waste, right? So you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as far as that's concerned. But yeah, that was the immediate example I could think of. Was just those barrels, because they're everywhere in the game, and
Yeah.
people use them all the time. But players don't think about the fact that somebody had to design out that entire system and make sure it worked and played nice, and then rope in design, combat design, to make sure that they're using it correctly, and seeing that, like, oh yeah, the Jabbermong actually picks up the barrels and
And
throws them
throws them
at
at you,
people.
yeah.
So yeah, yeah, that wouldn't have been possible had they not talked, to the character designers and made sure that, like, oh yeah, we have AI, we want them to interact with the environment and stuff like that too. So just kind of stuff like that you might not really think about initially. There's a lot of planning and work that goes into it that I don't think a lot of players will immediately recognize. And I mean, I don't think we expect them to recognize it, but it's cool when you have those moments in the
Hmm.
game that happen, and you're just like, oh snap, like this is really really cool. So yeah, I think it was during the gameplay reveal demo that I think Daquan, he's one of our QA, he was playing up on stage, and they were fighting the first kind of like mini
Shiv.
boss. Yeah,
Yeah.
they were fighting Shiv, and then he slid into the barrel and kicked it into Shiv, and
I
it
remember
exploded.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it's just stuff like that, right? And it's just like, man, that was so many different, like, collaborations that had to happen for that moment to happen. But then when it happens, you're like, damn, that was cool.
Right. I think
So
even on like stage, like a couple watching, like we were like, dang, that was actually
yeah,
pretty awesome.
yeah, the
You
Quan's
learn
just too
like new ways to
good.
take down bosses like as you're
Yeah.
watching it happen too. So,
Hmm.
that's just like one of the, pieces of magic that can occur.
Yeah.
Um so let's say that I am fresh out of high school
Hmm.
and I'm going into college and I'm like, I want to work in games
Yeah.
and I want to be a games designer, a systems designer. What do you think are some fundamental courses that will really help someone and guide them into becoming a real successful game or systems designer?
Fundamental courses. I don't know. Like, I don't think there's a specific course.
Hmm.
Because honestly, like, there's so many resources out there today
Yeah,
that, like, honestly, you might not even need to go to college. I don't want to tell
that
kids to
that
not
part,
go
like,
to
we're not going to
school, right?
encourage anyone to not
Yeah,
go to
yeah, yeah,
college.
yeah. But like, I'm just saying, there's so many resources. But I think the main thing is that you're basically studying. Uh,
Because we've
because
heard
we have,
level design is definitely one of the ones that we want to make sure we have an understanding of. So I think that's
yeah.
that's one point to make, and character art or design might be a great thing to pursue as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I agree with you when you say there's like no role, because I think that's one thing that we also have to realize when it comes to certain aspects of game, you know, careers, is that some professions don't really have an outline of
Yeah,
everything.
there's no, like, clear
There's
course
no clear
to
course.
like take to get to these positions, because they vary so much depending on what the studio is looking for as well.
Hmm.
So I think just kind of learning the basics of game design is really important. Just knowing how gameplay loops work. But yeah, I think level design is something that's a little easier to pick up, just because it's tangible. You have a level, you can run through
Hmm.
it. If you've ever played any game, there's most likely a level in it, and it has to be designed out to support the mechanics within the game. So
Hmm.
I think level design is probably a good starting point. It's not like you have to start with that, but
Yeah.
yeah, I think people can understand a little more about the design around making an environment support the mechanics that are designed for the game that they're making. So uh, just with that, yeah, I think just figuring out what, if you're going to a college, I'm sure they have a syllabus and all that stuff, and different courses. But yeah, uh, now there's tons of different curriculums and everything at different colleges, and they'll probably steer you in the right direction if you want to do
Yeah.
game design. But yeah, I think yeah, just learning learning the basics of game design, and then kind of branching off from that based on what you prefer. I think it would be the route to take. Um, yeah, it's really on like a case by case basis.
That
I
must
don't
be
know how
so
to.
hard to hear for the more organized individuals who are just like,
Yeah,
no, I need a plan. I need an outline. It's like when you like, there is none. It's like, what?
yeah. It's really like you have to look into it. It's like for specific types of design. So yeah, level design is one thing, but then systems design is a totally different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'd say not everybody's going to know exactly what they want to do within game development, but yeah, the sooner you do know, the better, because you can kind of steer your learning in the right direction. But yeah, especially because when I was going through college, there wasn't a clear cut path, and I just kind of chose some things that I thought would work, and
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky enough to have it work. So yeah, that would be my advice. But yeah, there's a lot of resources out there on game design, on level design, systems design, and yeah, there's just a lot out there.
What are some books that you've read that you feel have really helped you become a better systems designer?
um Man, I actually haven't read any books on systems design. It was
Or
really
anything? And
like
yeah.
yeah, like rules of play really is like the main one. I hear so many designers referencing that, and that I feel like that's kind of like the main one.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's really just like looking at design documents online, just
Yeah.
kind of immersing yourself in all of that. Really gets you. I feel like that will be more beneficial than trying to just read, books and stuff like that. I feel like just kind of getting out there, like getting your hands dirty. Honestly, that's like my way of learning, is just
Mm-hmm.
actually getting into
I love
Unreal or
that.
Unity
Yeah, and
and
kind of
just
playing
actually
around and
learning and
figuring it
stuff.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like I retain more information when I go through it and I have to figure things out than just kind
Mm-hmm.
of reading step by step, like do ABC. But yeah, really, it's really open. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like, but yeah, now we have more colleges that have courses for game development, so I don't think anybody would be lost going into a program for game development if they want to do design. I'm sure they have
Mm-hmm.
different courses for game designers and animators, concept artists, all of that stuff. So yeah.
So I know whether you're a youngin listening or someone, our age looking to switch careers or get into it, I know the main question that a lot might have, where the freebies at? Where the free stuff I can download and play around with. Cuz I'm not
Yeah.
trying to break the bank. What if you want a budget?
Yeah. Um, so there's a lot of stuff on the Unreal Marketplace, especially like blueprint stuff. Um, Not all of it is free, but they have a lot of free. Well, there's the initial like free templates for like first person shooter, for a twin stick shooter,
Mhm.
all that stuff, and you can download that stuff and really just kind of pick it apart. You can go in the blueprints and look at everything, see how it was set up. Um, yeah, there's a lot of stuff with that, but then I'm trying to think. Really, like the places I was going when I was in college, because I was more focused on art back then, was Polycount, which is like a game art forum, and
Mhm.
it's been around forever. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Like I don't know any current game design like forums or anything like that. But yeah, I'm sure they're out there.
So, what would you say has been kind of one of the more difficult things about navigating the industry and throughout your career? What are some things that you feel you've had to kind of learn or kind of push through?
One of the more difficult things. I feel like time management and work life balance is really important, because when I first entered the industry, I was working a lot. And I mean, you do kind of feel like you have something to prove because you're always told that, yeah, it's really cutthroat. It's really hard to get into this industry and everything. And I'm not going to lie, it is pretty hard, but
Mhm.
if you stick to it and you have that passion and everything, you will absolutely land a job. Because we can see your passion, we can see that you want to be in this industry making games. It's fun, it's frustrating, but it pays off when you get to see something you worked on release to the masses.
Exactly. I feel like
Um,
nothing beats that feeling of
yeah.
seeing like a product that you've been working on for like 4 years,
Hmm.
just kind of it's finally out in the wild. You can talk about it, you can show your stuff.
Yeah.
So, navigating through that, what what was that feeling like for you? Like when did you have that moment when you saw your product out there and you're like, "Wow, like I'm actually out here doing this."
I think it was really, I think it was after we released Tribes. After Tribes release, that was really big because we had this release party and all that stuff, and I was like, oh man, we really did that. We released this game, and it was like 15 to 20 of us that worked on that, and just seeing it out there and everything was really cool. And then I felt that again, especially after we had officially released Smite, because that was like at the time the biggest game I had worked on. It was out there and shipping on consoles and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, this is big. Uh, that was really cool because we ended up having a tournament, I think back in is 20 is either 2012 or 2013,
Mhm.
and it was the Smite World Championship, and they invited all these people to the Cobb Energy Center in Atlanta, Georgia, and to see the game that we made be played by these professional players for a prize pool of like $2.1 million. And I was like, "What is this? What is this life?" I was just like, "This is way bigger than I imagined it could have been." And then just seeing all the fans and having people come up to me because I'd been on like various streams before explaining, God
Yeah.
design and stuff like that, and explaining kits and stuff like that. And so having people come up to me and be like, "Man, you designed that. That's my favorite character." That was like the point for me where I'm just like, I almost get choked up. I'm just like,
Right?
man, this
Just
is
like,
this is something
ugh.
else. Yeah, yeah. At that point, I was just like, man, there's nothing better than this feeling of having your creativity put out there and for people to receive it, and then especially if it's received well, you're just like, man, this is something else. It just
For
feels good.
sure. What are
Yeah.
some of the major, because, going from, the games that you worked on and then jumping to working on Borderlands 3, what would you say for those? What is the main difference that you find working on a AAA game versus, being on a smaller team? Um, what are some of the differences you've seen or experienced?
I think there's working on smaller teams, you get a lot more responsibility. Definitely, uh, working on a AAA title is really different. It's rewarding in its own sense, but you definitely don't get to have as much creative freedom as you would have working on a smaller team. I feel like, which isn't bad. It's just kind of what you prefer.
Hmm.
And so for me, I feel like I definitely prefer working in smaller teams because everybody's doing their job, and there's no there's no room for people to slack off and not do what they're supposed to do. It's just there's once a project gets so big, there's so many things that can kind of fall through the cracks and stuff like that. And so producers really have to be on it. Really, everybody has to be on it. But I feel like that's the biggest difference is that uh, there's not that sense of freedom, creativity. I'm sorry,
It's okay.
I'm
We
having
like
the
good.
worst time trying to pronounce it
No, you.
creatively. Oh my
It happens
creativity,
to the best of us.
creatively. So yeah, yeah, there you have a lot more freedom. I feel like creatively in a smaller team. Um, but yeah, that's the biggest difference. Aside from that, yeah, it's just the same stuff. You know, figuring out why there's a weird bug happening with your stuff. That's always going to happen. QA is always going to break your stuff.
Yep.
So it's just yeah, dealing with all of that. Most of that is about the same, but yeah, I think that those were the two biggest difference to me. Were just yeah, not having that sense of creative freedom, and then also yeah, it's just once a team gets so big, some stuff can kind of just get lost. So
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
sure like communication is like a big thing that has to even be like up full force because the
Hmm.
larger a team gets, the more, people are going to be communicating and information is going to need to be passed on. So there's so many different, I guess aspects of that.
Yeah.
Do you feel there's more pressure working in AAA?
Um. Yeah. Yeah and no. Like I feel like it depends on the project you're working on too. Because I definitely felt like it, there was pressure to hit a certain mark, especially with Borderlands. There's certain titles that you hear and you're like, man, that like they better not mess it up. Like
Yeah, you're just like,
and
man.
yeah, it's like, oh, I don't want to be responsible for being, part of the reason why people don't like this game or,
Yeah.
that something like that. So yeah, I feel like there is a sense of pressure, but it's not like bad, because I feel like wanting to work on those projects, there's a reason why you want to work on them because they've been so popular before and you want to work on something that's awesome, but you also want to push it. So
Exactly.
I don't think like I wouldn't take it as like pressure. It's just like motivation, to do something more and do something better. Uh, or at least that's how I feel about it. But yeah, there might be some pressure depending on where you're at in the pipeline. But yeah, it's something else. I yeah, I really like working on AAA games. But yeah, if I had the choice, I would probably always opt to work on like a smaller like indie project just because I feel like especially indie games these days are doing really
Crazy.
cool stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
massive.
and yeah, they're able to take more risks and stuff like that. So yeah, I would prefer a smaller team, but yeah, there's nothing wrong with working on a AAA title.
What are some pieces of software that you feel is someone looking to go into your field should really dabble in? I hear a lot of Unreal talk. But
Yeah.
what are some other programs that you find very useful to kind of learn and navigate through?
Yeah. Well, yeah, Unreal, especially because I've been working in that pretty much my entire career. So, so I have to plug Unreal. But yeah, Unity is also really good. I know there's some free game. I think it's like Game Maker
Yeah.
is another really good one. RPG Maker. There's just a bunch of kind of like free editors out there that especially I'm trying to remember the name of it. There was one for like narrative games that I
Hmm.
hadn't heard of before, and I'm trying to remember it. I can't remember it right now, but
Yeah.
I just heard about it because I was sitting in on milestone review for the Code Coven, which is this program for marginalized groups within game development to kind of learn game development.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, I was sitting in on one of those reviews, and they were using this program to create their narrative game, and they had like templates and everything. And I was like, oh man, that's really cool. I had no idea it existed, but yeah,
I didn't
there's a
either. I
yeah.
just learned something new.
I'll try and get you the link after this, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was really cool to see. But yeah, like the I think like Game Maker and RPG Maker and stuff like that are really good for people trying to prototype out, just simple RPG elements and stuff like that. Unreal is a lot more involved. I feel like, especially getting in the blueprint and stuff like that, it can be really daunting. But yeah, just kind of jumping into it, there's tons of YouTube tutorials and stuff like that out there for pretty much anything you want to try and do in Unreal. And there's so many different ways to metaphorically skin a cat as far as Unreal is concerned. So yeah, that in itself is just a whole journey. I feel like, but yeah, those would be kind of my top three would be Unreal, Unity, and Game Maker.
Awesome. What do you think about the new UE 5?
It looks incredible. I can't wait to get my hands on it.
Messing around
I,
with it.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
know. It's crazy that that demo video was just so eye-opening with how far
Hmm.
games have come. And what are you excited for about the future of games? Because I mean, we're getting on the level of games like, I just finished up The Last of Us, and Ghost of
Hmm.
Tsushima is coming up next week already. Wow.
Oh man, yeah, I'm real excited for that. By the
Yeah, but
way.
just seeing games like that too, I'm just like, dang, like how far we've come with just
Hmm.
doing these, like, because I know for sure in like The Last of Us, they have like concept art that you can pull up and look at, and you can like, or
Yeah,
like just character models and like zooming in on these characters and the skin textures. And I'm just like, this is getting
yeah,
scary how much these games
yeah,
are starting to look so real, but it's also
yeah.
exciting because it just kind of makes me think about like where we're headed. So how are you feeling about where gaming is headed?
Oh, I'm real excited because I mean the technology is just getting better and better every single year, and we're seeing more ridiculous things be done with that technology. Interesting thing to me though is seeing the technology become better. And yeah, we have the games that are hyper realistic and everything, but I'm seeing a lot of games, especially indie games, they're doing a lot more like these really ridiculous art games that just look incredible, and they have these unique art styles, and they're able to do just incredible things with the technology that we weren't able to do before. And so I want to see more of that just because I
Yeah.
like when I see like a weird game or a weird art style, I'm like, I've never seen that before. And I'm just like, I want to play that.
Hmm.
Of course, I like the hyper realistic stuff too. But I don't know, it's just something about being able to do something out of the box with the technology we're giving. Because I know people want to make these hyper realistic textures and everything, but seeing somebody take that and flip it on his head and then do something you just never thought of, that to me is way more interesting. And so
Yeah.
I'm excited to see more of that, especially I think one example I would give was Control, just seeing just kind of
I was
just
about to
the
mention
tricks
that.
they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, just it's insane.
It's
And yeah.
crazy because, like, I think that's what people get too focused on, especially with games. Recently, like the game doesn't have to look like hyper realistic and crazy
Hmm.
graphics. Sometimes it can, like, simplicity is best. And I think it still shows how versatile like games are, and that we can still have like games that are all kinds of ways and still look cartoony or whatever. Like, there's no one way that a game has to look to be great. Um,
Yeah.
and I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe that's what's going to make someone, a great designer as well, is dabbling in all kinds of games, playing all kinds
Hmm.
of games, and really kind of getting a feel for what other developers are doing and what other developers are working on, and take in that information and get inspired by it.
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of what I've seen, from my short time right now. Short time, but it's about to be a long time in the
Yeah. Yeah.
industry. Is that like I've seen a lot of comments or focus on like, oh, how the game graphics don't look hyper realistic, or it doesn't look like real, like those people can jump out of my TV screen, and I'm like, who cares? I'm like,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
really like the most important thing about what makes a game great? Like, it's not.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. Just the way that games are going right now, I think we're in for something really fascinating.
Yeah.
And I just like how games become, the bigger they become, I think the more accessible these programs and software will be. Because I think, you mentioned like one of the things that you really like about Unreal is how accessible it is to
Yeah.
the public. Like there's so many tutorials and things like that online, and material that people can really get into and learn. And I think that's what's going to be really important moving forward, is as well making sure communities have access to this kind of stuff. Because
Hmm.
growing up, I don't really think, especially like for me, I ever thought that I could work in games. Like I had always consumed the media, and I was playing Super Mario Bros. And 64, all that stuff. But like
Yeah.
it hadn't like occurred to me until like very late in life that I was like, oh, I can work on this stuff, because it
Yeah.
always seemed very untangible. Like, because like growing up in minority families, they're always like, oh, you need to go be a doctor, be a lawyer, or go have
Yep.
like, some professional. Because games were never seen as professional, even though I'm
Yeah.
like, but you bought me a Super Nintendo though. Like, so why are
Yeah.
you like surprised that I'm getting into this and like
Right.
really taking in the material or the content?
Yeah.
The they'll just kind of try to steer you in that direction. So, luckily, my mom growing up was into art and stuff, so she never really pushed me away from the idea of taking a more creative step. She was always very supportive of that. And my dad didn't quite understand it, but he was very supportive of it still. But like you still have that where you don't think that you can do these things, and so you go and pursue, other professions in life.
Yeah.
So I really like that it's becoming accessible for a lot of people, especially within our communities, to pick it up and take interest in it and learn. But that was my experience. But for you, did you feel that way growing up, or was your family very supportive of your pursuits of working in games?
Yeah, it was pretty much the same. And that's kind of been something I've been thinking about a lot, especially over the years. Yeah, it was. So when I was growing up, my dad, like he got us consoles and everything. He had the Atari 2600. So like from a very young age, I was exposed to video games. Nintendo, Super Nintendo, PlayStation One, all of that stuff.
Hmm.
And I was fortunate enough to have all of that stuff. And then also, we got like a gateway computer. I think it was back in like, what was it, 95 or something
Oh,
like that.
same. Yeah,
Yeah,
we got
yeah.
that computer, and I was
Yeah,
like,
with the
whoa,
cow,
the
like the cow print. Yeah.
possibilities.
Yep. And so, yeah, I feel really fortunate to have been exposed to like video games and technology in that way. But I know like a lot of people within our community, did not have that same privilege. And so I want to try and figure out some way to inform, especially our youth, today, about these, like, about technology, about the fact that this is a real job that they can
Hmm.
have. They can pursue this. And I think that's important because, yeah, I was fortunate enough to have that stuff, but I know not everybody was.
Hmm.
And just through having that, like, just around me, not even thinking about doing that as a profession, but uh, I know when I got into high school, um, I was just really into technology. Yeah, once we had that gateway computer and everything, I was just on the computer all the time. I was start playing games on the computer, and then I eventually there was a computer store, like a mom and pop shop, called Surf Tech Computers, back in
Hmm.
Savannah, and I remember going there and I wanted to do like a work study, because I was a senior in high school, and I was like, okay, well, I have this free period, so I want to be able to do like a work study or something like that. And so I would go over there all the time because they had like a land center as well. And so I went over there, and I feel like I just kept bugging them. I was like always there, like asking them about computer stuff, and like they eventually hired me. And I learned how to build computers over there. I learned how to do networking and stuff like that. And so through that, I feel like that established my love for technology, and then also my love for video games. They just kind of went hand in hand, and then I eventually started seeking out, like, okay, how do I like actually start making games? And then from there, it was just kind of history. I went to SCAD, all of that stuff. But yeah, yeah, I definitely feel like it it wasn't that way before, when we were growing up. But now I feel like it's so accessible, like you were saying, and there's just so much out there that we'd be doing ourselves and our communities a disservice if we didn't try to like get it out there that like this is the actual career that you could pursue.
For
Um,
sure.
so yeah, I definitely feel you. Like my parents, like my mom, she didn't understand it. She never, she still supported me, and like my dad, he just got us consoles because we like playing games. I
Yeah.
would play games with my brother and everything. But yeah, I
It
remember
was
my mom.
always
She
like
was,
fun and leisure, not like
yeah.
go do this for a job, only for fun.
Yep, yep. And yeah, to this day, my mom, she always like reminds me, she's like, I remember, taking away your games and stuff like that. And it's like, you ain't gonna do nothing with those games. And I was like, yeah, I am. Like,
Okay.
I'm absolutely. And then now
Look at me
she's like,
now.
yeah, she's just so proud of me. And like, she's just my biggest fan and everything
Oh.
when it comes to that stuff. And so yeah, it's just really cool, kind of going through all of that and then actually finding success, and then
Hmm.
yeah, and then just having your parents support, especially after you're like, okay, yeah, I'm actually gonna do this. I'm gonna try and do it. So yeah, yeah,
I
it's
think
it's
that's the
pretty cool.
thing too, especially when they see like that you are like committed to it and
Hmm.
you're focused on it. And then they see like, okay, they're living a comfortable life, like they're okay, they're not like scrapping for
Yeah.
survival. So this might not be so bad after
Yeah.
all. And eventually like it does get better and they let up on it for sure, because I think that was how it was with mine as well. Once they saw like, oh, you actually can have like benefits and a career like with this
Yeah.
thing, okay. Because I don't think like it was ever really presented to them like that, as far as like games, that this was something that could be on that scale. But
Hmm.
now games are getting so big and the industry is growing and growing, to where it is very much like up there with the film industry and all the other entertainment, forms of entertainment within the industry. It's like at that level too, like it's
Yeah.
you know
Definitely.
games is really profitable right now. And I think even the market is getting larger as the years go by, for sure. um,
Yeah.
but of course, with that growth, sometimes others might not feel so positively about it. So what is that like for you, seeing the games industry grow? Do you worry sometimes about how that is going to affect the creativity of developers within the industry if it becomes too much on a corporate scale? Do you feel like that side of games is in jeopardy?
I don't think so. I think there's always going to be the need and want for those big AAA titles. I mean, it's been tried and true, over like year after year after year. There's a reason
Mm-hmm.
why there's certain games that come out every single year.
Yep.
That train is not stopping anytime soon. And especially in these days, with COVID and everything, uh, video games are flourishing. Like we we are
Yeah.
thriving right now, despite everything that's going on. And I think that that's just kind of a testament to the resilience of the industry. But also, I think that the bigger that this industry gets, the more people are going to be drawn to it, and we're going to see a lot more creativity. I don't see it as a bad thing, it getting bigger. I think there's going to be a place for those big games. I mean, you can just look at other forms of entertainment, right? There's going to be the big blockbuster films, and then you have the indie films that people
Exactly.
also enjoy. You have the film festivals, all that stuff. So yeah, I think that yeah, games are gonna follow the same track as far as that's concerned. And it's really just going to be up to the individual what they want to pursue within that industry. And so yeah, as it grows, I think there's definitely going to be changes. I don't know what kind of changes, but I think that yeah, eventually there's going to have to be. I think the industry still has to grow up a little bit too. There's a lot of things that were kind of the Wild West, you
Especially
know.
recently, yeah, there's and I kind of like wanted to lead into that too, because I know like the
Hmm.
past like month has just been really wild.
Oof.
I mean, I can't even,
Yeah.
where do we start?
Yeah.
But in,
Ooh.
yeah, I know that's a conversation that has continuously come about time and time again is, especially with how much this industry is flourishing and how, there's so much possibility within it, um, and so much, that we can access. But as a part of one trend that I notice a lot of, is definitely I feel like some areas that this industry still needs to grow is its diversity
Hmm.
aspect of it. So yeah, I wanted to ask kind of your opinion on that too, because I know recently the conversation that's been the major talk is just having more people of color within studios, and because I know that's one thing that we always see in the games industry. You look at the studio photo and it's like, oh, there's like two black people that look like me. Hey, like like even
I
like
mean,
I've
yeah.
I've felt that within, the industry. Like every time I've seen like, another black person, I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like I need to
Yeah.
like you're here. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
It's
I
like we
mean,
out here. It's
right? Like I'm
like
like, we out here. So
yeah.
yeah, like what is your take on that? Because, I definitely feel that's one area that this industry can definitely improve on. But I'm sure like we all feel the same way about that, and we see it.
Hmm.
We've experienced it. So we
Yeah.
we know it's a problem.
Yeah. I think that's gonna lie with uh, it's multiple things.
Mhm.
I feel just because like what I was talking about earlier uh, with just our youth knowing that the there that there's a possibility for you having a career within this industry.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, just having that knowledge even be out there, I think is step one. Because you'd be surprised whenever I go back. I've been invited to speak at SCAD in the past like decade. I've gone back and I've spoken to the students there and everything. They're already there. They already know they want to get into game development, but usually I'll try and go back to my old high school, HV Jenkins, um, and I would just go and talk to the technology students and tell them what I do and everything, and just seeing like the look on some of their faces when they're like, "Wait, you could do that?"
Yeah.
Is really cool, and I don't know if anything will come out of it, but I feel like especially having somebody that looks like us, uh, you know, say like, "Hey, I did it, and you can too." That might make a difference. That might make the world of a difference to even if it's just one student. I think that in itself is part one of this whole thing, and then also I think there has to be a lot of changes with just hiring,
Mhm.
HR, all that stuff. I feel like there just needs to be just need to wipe it clean, start over,
Yeah.
try again, because there's just so many practices that I feel like have affected marginalized communities trying to get into the industry. And we already know that a lot of people feel like this industry is very hard to get into. And then so what happens when you add additional barriers to that? And I definitely feel like there hasn't been a real focus on hiring for diversity and
Yeah.
stuff like that. Of course, you want to hire the best person for the job, but there, like you said earlier, with just seeing like the company photos and stuff like that, there's
Yeah.
not a whole lot of people. There's not a whole lot of diversity in those photos most of the time, and so I would like to see more diversity in those company photos and stuff like that. But yeah, I think it starts with overhauling how HR works within the industry. I know that's not the same for every single studio. I know
Yeah.
there's some studios that are very progressive and they're trying to make a difference. I think probably one good example of that is Double Fine.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, it's I think it's just going to take time, and really, yeah, just kind of overhauling all of that, because it seems like a kind of like a clubhouse right now.
And it
And
seems so, and exactly, and because it feels that way, it's like, dang, like this feels so beyond my reach, or you feel like you have to like really grind and networking and things like that to really even
hmm
feel like you have a chance. um
yeah,
but not even just, like HR do, and recruiters doing the work to make sure we're getting diverse talent in here, but also making sure that they can maintain that diverse talent, because it's like, it's one thing to just be like, okay, we hired the black people, or we have
yeah,
like, other people of color in our studio, and it's like, yeah, okay, great, like, you're like, here's all these people of color we've hired, but it's like,
yeah,
okay, like, how are they, what is their experience like at your studio? Are you doing
yeah,
anything to make sure that you're maintaining or retaining the talent? um
hmm
because that can be another factor all in itself. But yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad that like we got to discuss this part as well, because I think a lot of people are looking for that too, to, not only to hear like all the glitz and glamour, but to know that like these are also things that possible, like problems that you might face or that occur. And I think it's great to be aware of it, but I
yeah,
don't think that this should deter anyone from trying to pursue this industry, because your talent and your voice and your perspective is so needed.
yeah.
So
It
despite
really is.
what you've seen the past 2 months on Twitter, all the discourse that's happening right now, I just like want to let you guys know personally, if you're looking to get into the games industry and things like that, like, I don't think that what you're seeing should be any deterrent for you to step away from it, because we need you guys here in this industry as well, because you're so
hmm
important. So I
Yeah,
just want to make sure that that is known too, for
yeah.
sure.
I agree. Yeah, it's been a rough couple weeks for as far as that's concerned, and yeah, it's eye opening. I feel like for a lot of people, because a lot of that stuff was out of sight, out of mind
Hmm.
for probably a majority of our industry. But yeah, please don't let that deter you from applying, from wanting to enter into the games industry, because it is a really awesome place to be, especially now. Like I said, games are flourishing during this time where we're in quarantine and everything. People are buying games like crazy. But yeah, it's an awesome industry to work in, and yeah, we do need more diverse voices in, like, on the development team. Just because, yeah, I've seen time and time again where some studios have to even walk back stuff that they put in games, because
Yeah.
it's like, oh man, there definitely was not a black person in the room when they were
They were
deciding.
not in the room where it happens, and
Yeah,
it shows.
yeah, yeah, or there wasn't a woman in the room, or yeah, it's just like it, and it's just like, man, how do you mess this up? And it's just like, yeah, there's just not
Yeah.
diversity. And so yeah, it's real important that I think that we get more diverse voices in game development, especially on the dev teams, so we can alleviate that problem. Because man, there's just some stuff you see and you're just like, man,
Like, what?
I
Who
don't know
signed
how
off
this
on
got
this?
past every single person. Um,
Because, it's like it goes through multiple passes, and you just like,
yeah.
dang, like this made it every
hmm
time? What?
It's like this shipped. Like this was put in a box. Like it was pressed on a disc and put in a box.
Like, wow.
Um,
So how
yeah.
have you been, I know, like, given how things are now, and just everyone pushing and making the switch to working remote, and I assume
hmm
you're working remote as well, like, how was
Yeah.
that been? And I know, like, that's another thing that we're seeing too, because it's, I think this whole situation, like with COVID especially, is really showing how like studios are developing games remotely. So what has
hmm
that experience been like, working on games remotely, and what are some of the difficulties that you find having to switch from being in-house and collaborating in person to having to try to do all of that behind the computer?
It's been something else. I can't lie to you. It's been interesting because I moved to this job here at Airship back in April. I think
Hmm.
my first day was April 6th. And I have not been in the studio at all. Like
Oh
I
wow.
didn't set foot in the studio. And everything has been through, Slack, video conferences, all that stuff. I can pull all my stuff down through Perforce. And I've just been working in Unreal and seeing people through Zoom. Like it's been real interesting. And I'm like, man, how long am I gonna be working from my apartment before I actually meet my coworkers?
It's so
And
weird too. It's like
yeah,
I've
it's
only ever seen you behind a computer screen. This is so weird.
yeah, yeah. It's like they have no idea like how tall I am. Like it's just like they have no idea. Like all they've seen of me is like this camera angle right here. Like,
Right.
and I'll get on and I'll get on a meeting and it's just like, hey, what's going on, guys? And we've been trucking along. We've hit milestones and all that stuff. It's been really yeah, it's been really interesting because like I miss being able to go into a studio and the camaraderie and just being able to see people and talk to people face to face.
Hmm.
And I understand. I definitely understand why we can't do that right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I do miss it, but yeah, I'm not in any hurry to get back until all of this is over,
Oh, for sure.
or at least until it's safe. But yeah, it's been something else. Yeah, just trying to navigate that whole space and trying to keep office morale up and everything. I feel like has been also another interesting thing that studio heads and producers and stuff have had to deal with uh, in the midst of this pandemic. Is just like how do you keep office morale up like when
Right.
everybody's working from home, and stuff like that. So I've seen like some of my friends, like they get care packages for their studio and all that stuff. And yeah, it's different. Nobody's ever been through this before in this day and age.
Right.
So yeah, just trying to take it day by day, honestly.
And I mean that's all you can do, right? And
Yeah.
I mean that's honestly a great perspective to have with that.
Hmm.
So, well, KP, I appreciate you having you on. Where can
Hey, thanks
everyone
for
find
having me.
you?
You can find me on Twitter at datkp though. Um,
Hey.
I'm on Instagram at 3DKP. And yeah, that's pretty much yeah. I try and use Twitter a little more. I don't use Instagram as often, but yeah, I'm usually on there. Yeah, that's about it. I'm on Facebook a little less often now these
Yeah,
days,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
I appreciate you coming on, KP.
Yeah,
Thank you
thanks for
so
having me.
much. And everyone else, thank you so much for listening in. And you can tune in to anything PBN on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff, YouTube as always. And with that, I will see you guys on the next Nerd Talk.